Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a good first day yesterday and day two's off to a good start. My name's Jason Georgi. I am the field CTO for Prism Access and SASE at Palo Networks. Anybody here familiar with the term SASE or Secure Access Service Edge? We're at a cloud conference here today, so this is a cloud delivered capability, right? But this is really about access, right? And I'm going to explain what this means in very simple terms because I saw most hands not go up. But since we're at a cloud conference, I want to make sure that it's clear to all of you. I'm not talking about securing cloud workloads, containers, and code, right? CI/CD pipeline and things like that. I'm talking about securing the access between users and to wherever they're going, whether that happens to be a cloud or some other internet resource or the data center. So just want to make sure everybody was level set on what we're going to talk about today. It still should be exciting. There are no prerequisites or requisite knowledge to be able to absorb what I'm going to tell you. I'm a dummy. I keep things super simple because that's how I like people to talk to me. Let's go ahead and get started. To ground the conversation, I would just like to say that if we think about what the pandemic did to us a few years ago, but even going back 10, 12 years ago with mobility and things like cloud and SaaS adoption, it became very clear that work is an activity, it's not a place. And when we use that as a grounding statement, right, when we think about how we need to make technology decisions moving forward, it makes it easier and clearer to just assume that guardrails that we had in place, certain assumptions for when users accessed resources are no longer there. Think about when we badge into an office, authenticate to a network, before we even try to access a resource on that network. There are guardrails, right? Toll gates to get us there. When everybody's sent home or people are traveling on the road, a lot of those go away. They just don't exist. So how do we keep a level security posture, policy, and reach, regardless of where a user works? That's what SASE is really meant to solve at the end of the day. We need to look at things when we talk about, okay, if workers aren't always going to be in an office, data is not always contained within a perimeter, we need to look at risk two ways when it comes to access, right? One is what all cybersecurity companies should be doing, blocking threats. Simple enough. If we're not doing that, we're in the wrong business, right? But the other element that most other organizations that try to deploy a successful SASE miss is the operational element, right? Business resiliency. It was one thing when things like proxy services started moving to the cloud to replace an on-prem set of proxy servers, right? Now we're sending mission-critical traffic through these secure access service edges from users, no matter where they work, to these applications with critical traffic going through it. Business resiliency is required for these services now. So we have to take a harder look at how we do that. And this is going to become very clear why things are a little bit better when we do things with Google. So let's go ahead and look at this, as I said, in a simple way. As I opened this up, we used to do things in a certain way. We used to make sure we had certain capabilities before our users accessed anything. That eroded significantly 10, 12 years ago with the onset of cloud and mobility. The pandemic just ushered that in, right? Further, it eroded that completely to where we had to assume there were no assumptions, right? So it changed the way we thought about things. It also created challenges that we're dealing with today. Things like fragmented security posture. When we have different tools all over the place now because users are going through one tech stack, when they're on-prem, accessing on-net resources, going through a different tech stack, when they're at home, accessing different resources, we fragment what we're trying to keep secure. And obviously, fragmentation is difficult to manage and control. Things like inconsistent user experience, right? Hey, when I'm at home, actually access to these SaaS applications is great. I go into the office and it's terrible. Or vice versa with private applications. When I'm in the office, man, these certain applications work great. I go home, they're really slow, I can't work. It's a productivity issue. So user experience, let's just remember, this isn't about unhappy users calling the help desk and creating tickets. It's their inability to work. And we need our employees to work. That's how we stay productive as an organization, right? And then of course, policy management and complexity. We need to keep things simple. The more we have to manage, the more gaps can occur, the more things can go wrong. So we need to get better about this and take a better approach. So why don't we look at something that delivers outcomes in a more simplified way? What we're solving for at the business level, pretty simple, right? I'm not going to read all these to you, but these should be objectives familiar to everybody. What are we trying to look at? We're trying to make sure hybrid workers have a secure way of accessing their resources. When we have heavy M&A activity going on, can we lessen the time to value of that acquisition, right? How do we make sure that our business outcomes are being achieved when it comes to access? And I'll explain this simply later. There's a three-pronged underpinning to all of this, though. What we have to make sure we're doing, ensuring we've got visibility and control. So if we've got this access, you need to be able to see it and control. We can't manage what we don't see. Can't control what we don't manage, right? So it starts with that. We need to make sure that no matter what we do, user experience is improved, not reduced. And then, of course, we want to make sure we're trying to simplify our environment. Too many tools to manage are typically why we're here, right? Something like cloud resources makes things easy to manage. As we all know, may not always be the cheapest option for what we're trying to do, but it increases agility because things are simpler to do. They're faster to do, right? No different in the cybersecurity space. It's the exact same concept. The idea of a secure access service edge moves us forward. Why? Because it's a simplified approach to access. Let's look at this simply. You got users, resources they need to access. Doesn't matter where these users are, whether they're at home, traveling, or in a branch, okay? They need to access these resources, like I said earlier, no matter where they live, whether it's in the data center, cloud, VPC, colos, SaaS, or web, right? So you've got these two things that we need to get together. All SASE is meant to do, or Secure Access Service Edge, is connect these things as securely and efficiently as possible with the ability to manage that user experience. That's it. So let's keep it simple for right now, right? The idea, access from any user to any resource securely, efficiently, and being able to view that traffic. Now, why is that important? Because the promise of SASE, when Gartner introduced the market and the industry in August of 2019, was to converge networking and security to deliver better outcomes. A unified platform solution that gives us access to both private applications and public applications in a unified way. The challenge that we've found here at Palo Networks is that not all of the SASE vendors out there are living up to that hype, right? The promise of SASE is kind of falling down a little bit. So let's look at the tool set. Typical environment, right? This may look familiar to a lot of you. Same idea. Users need to access data center and cloud resources. They're doing it over a VPN today. They want to access internet resources. They're doing it over a proxy, SaaS resources over a CASB, right? What we see now are certain vendors saying, well, we can replace your VPN with a ZTNA solution, easy enough, okay? And then we can replace your on-prem proxy and your CASB with a more unified approach from the cloud. Okay. It's still two products at the end of the day, still two architectures. And then what are you doing about the branch? A lot of organizations are saying, I don't know if SD-WAN's really a thing for me. I'm telling you right now, it's picking back up because of the hybrid workforce, people going back into the office. Those offices were largely let alone, but is there a way to get more optimal with what we're doing there, both from a traffic routing perspective and a cost perspective? Getting rid of private line connectivity in favor of something more dynamic and internet and cloud friendly, right? So this environment now, today, that a lot of our competitors push, right, is still not necessarily solving the problem of fragmentation, multiple security policies, access control policies, things like that. So it's good, might be better than where a lot of our organizations are today, but we think it could be better still. I'll just go ahead and advance it. So the idea here then is to take that whole same idea and unify the approach. One cloud-delivered capability that solves a problem of ZTNA. It solves a problem of a secure web or internet gateway. It solves a problem of your CASB, firewall as a service, and integrated SD-WAN. One capability supplying those users no matter where they are to resources no matter where they live. Should be pretty straightforward from here. Now, when we think about how AI can help this, right? This is probably the most popular acronym over the last 7 months for good and bad reasons, right? I think ChatGPT opened a lot of our eyes to what AI can do, but it also opened our eyes to where it has its flaws. When it was first introduced and its knowledge index went up to September 2021 and you asked it a question it didn't know, what did it do? Say, I'm sorry, I don't know. This is too new for me. No, it lied to you. It still does if it doesn't know the answer. But it's challenging you to try to get smarter. That's what AI does. So when it comes to how AI can power something like a secure access service edge, it's all about the data. Good data produces good outcomes and results. So it's making sure that that data is complete, consistent, and correct, right? And how do we do that when we think about access tools? And how does that actually help us from a security perspective, a networking perspective, because SASE is a convergence of networking and security, but then operations on day two once this is deployed? Can we actually use a lot of these tools for good? You've heard a lot about AI so far in the last day and a half, I'm sure. And we're talking about using it for good, but also protecting our organizations from when it can be used for harm. Today, I'm talking about it for where it could be good for us in our organizations. So we want to make sure that let's start with the security side, right? We want to make sure we're taking a more secure approach to Zero Trust Network Access because it's important. You'll hear this acronym, ZTNA, right? Zero Trust Network Access. It's actually another market that Gartner created right before SASE. The whole idea is removing implicit trust. A user here needs that access to that resource. There's no implicit trust between the two, right? So we're removing that and we're granting access via policy. However, what are those policies based on? Identity, right? So you have credentials, you log in, you get authorized based on who you are, the device you're coming from, and then your entitlements are granted based on those variables, right? The challenge that we see with a lot of these solutions is, what happens then when identity is the attack vector? Let's think about, I came from the legendary firewall company, right? We use these things to fortify a perimeter. It's pretty simple, right? We're trying to protect what's inside those walls, building up this firewall architecture. Well, that's no longer the most efficient attack vector, obviously, because data is not all stored there, and even a lot of critical data isn't stored there. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to look at identity as a primary attack vector. Why? Because if I'm an attacker, instead of trying to brute force my way into a data center or a cloud VPC, I can just go on LinkedIn for a little while. What company am I targeting? Who's on the M&A team? Who's their executive leadership team? And cast a wide enough net of spear phishing, right? So let's drop this in here. That's going to go ahead and so when we go ahead and initiate that spear phishing campaign, all it takes is 1 or 2 clicks to get us to where we want to go. And from there, we need to do something about that, right? If identity is the attack vector, we need to be able to solve this. So as we look at where the attack vector or the threat landscape is changing, we need to get much better at our approach. How do we do that? We answer questions, right? So when we say, hey, this access needs to be granted, there are a few things I need to know first. Who? Who are you, right? So it all starts with the user needing access to something. I apologize, team. I think this is my fault. I think my slides are a little out of order here, but that's okay. Show must go on. Let's do it. All right, so users need access to resources. I'm gonna back up this slide. When that user needs access to that resource, what did I say about Zero Trust Network Access? Everything stops, right? So there's no implicit access between a user and the resource they're trying to access. So the cloud intercepts that request for access. Nothing else happens from there until we do a few checks, right? So every ZTNA solution on the market is asking a couple of questions of who and what. Who are you? What device are you coming from? What do you want to access? Based on your identity, the role in your organization, that access will be granted to you, right? And then, okay, you're off and running. There's a third question that needs to be asked that we ask, not many others do, which is, what's inside? So once we do grant that access via policy, are we looking at what's inside that session for anything bad that could be happening? If the answer is no, this is where we start to fall down, and this is where we get into the identity-based attack vector. And we have to look at this from several ways. It's not just the outsider threat, right? The one that we know is the example I gave before, use LinkedIn, cast a spear phishing net or whatever else. It's the insider threat as well. If I'm a highly privileged user of Palo Alto Networks, and I want to do damage to some of my resources, what's to stop me if I can log in and via identity-based access policy, I have the ability to upload to a host, package up some malware, upload it, somebody else downloads it. Nothing's going to stop me from doing that. So it's the external threat, the internal threat, but then also the unintentional harm. The person that does accidentally click that spear phishing link, right? So now all of a sudden I click the link, oh crap, maybe I'll be okay. Then I'm trying to log into something, so I get my MFA prompt, and I'm like, yep. And then it's like, oh, something else. Wait, I already clicked yes. Well, I'm just going to ignore it. I keep getting this prompt. Right? MFA bombing happens. I click it out of fatigue. All of a sudden now, somebody externally has access to that resource, the same access I have. Spoofing is becoming very sophisticated. There are things we have to do to stop that. So now if we're saying zero trust network access blocks that initial request for access and then starts to look forward, right? Providing that access, an identity-based access usage is going to be the attack vector. The way to mitigate that is by asking that third question, what's inside? Let's walk through this. If we look at what Prisma Access does, that's our secure access service edge, right? The whole idea is to identify user and device by asking the who. Who are you? What device are you coming from? All the context I need to know. Where are you? Should my entitlements change if I'm not sitting in my office, but I even took my managed device to the Bahamas on vacation? We view that as a high-risk area. Probably. I probably shouldn't have access to certain tools that I do in my during my day job, right? So it's all about having context. Who is who am I? What device am I on? And then the what, which is what are my entitlements based on that context? Should I have full access to the application, like I said? Read-only access, upload, download? If you think about a lot of our private applications, right? They're not all SaaS-like. Typically, our private apps are built in 3 ways, dev, prod, and QA. There's really no persona-based entitlements in them. So if everybody needs access, everybody in your company needs access to an application, but the attribute level of that access is variable, how do you control that if you don't have layer 7-based policy, right? So that's what this is all about. It's about ensuring that we know who the user is, full context, before providing access, okay? That's the what. And only giving them the level of access they need to do their job, truly least privileged. From there, that's when we start getting into the what's inside. Content security inspection. So once that access is granted, even by a policy, hey, I know who you are, you've authorized yourself, you have access by policy, I'm gonna make sure you can't do anything bad to that resource. Even a private application. I'm gonna make sure you can't upload malware to that private app. I'm gonna ensure you can't exfiltrate data that you're not supposed to, right? Whether it's intentional or unintentional harm, this is what mitigates identity-based attacks and threats, is something in line capturing this session data while applying something like DLP to all these things, right? We're trying to protect our data. Protect users, apps, and data is key to any cybersecurity organization, should be key to you guys, right? If we're trying to help you do the best thing you can, this is what we need to be able to solve for. So with that, let's look at this in an analogy, right? I think a lot of us traveled here. I know I travel all the time. If you're looking at ZTNA solutions that are identity-based only, that's just like taking your ID and your boarding pass to the TSA or border officer. Here's my stuff. And then all of a sudden they say, cool, head to your plane, have a nice day. Convenient, throwback to the old days, but pretty scary. Some ZTNA solutions have added some basic security filtering capabilities, like looking at the OWASP top 10, doing some basic data filtering. From our perspective, it's clearly not enough. Not for everybody. If you're a known traveler and you're authorized, global entry, whatever, fine. We may have a little looser requirements for you, but at the end of the day, everybody else, send them through that body scanner, put the bag down on the bag scanner, and check the payload. That's our approach. Making sure that we're looking for known and unknown threats once access is granted via policy. So I hope that makes sense. See, like I said, I'm a dummy and I like to keep things simple. So this allows us to get much better data when it comes to stopping threats. We sit in line, we see all of this traffic, right? We understand what's happening, so we can use AI to drive better security outcomes, right? Seeing the number of threats we see a day means we're learning, means you're benefiting, right? It's a good thing. Now, everybody says, cool, hey, I like security. Security's a good thing for me. But at what cost to user experience? Because every time we hear this, I got to turn on this, I got to turn on that, I got to turn. It's gonna slow things down. And we're talking about how we improve user experience, right? Well, that's really where our partnership with Google shines. The cloud service I talked about that does all the security inspection and everything like that, we did not build it ourselves. We leveraged GCP. Yep, just like most of you, we're a GCP customer too. And that helps us, right? It helps us provide the resiliency we need. It helps us provide the security processing at near line rate speed that we need. And it helps us ensure the performance is good, which I'll get into why, so that we can offer SLAs around this stuff, industry-leading SLAs. Because I can say anything I want to you guys. It's not gonna matter until you actually try it or something goes wrong and you're like, I got a problem here. Business impacting incident, right? Put your money where your mouth is. So how does this look from our perspective? Your perspective if you're a customer of ours? Leveraging the Google Cloud gives us things like, well, multi-zone availability. Something happens, just like you guys have with your workloads. We've got dual, triple, quad availability zones depending on the region, right? We've got the ability to isolate customers. Because of the expansiveness of the hyperscalers, we have instantiated data planes for each and every one of our customers. Nobody feels a noisy neighbor condition. So you could send 100,000 users through our service doing the exact same thing. The customer over here with 1,000 users isn't even gonna feel it, okay? Incredibly important when we're talking about business continuity and resiliency, making sure things work the way they need to. And then of course, scale, the ability to auto scale. If we have high demand events going on and you need throughput, we don't wanna choke you. We want you to use the cloud the way you need to use the cloud. So let's use cloud dynamic resources to make this a reality. So let's take a look at this in action. Leveraging the GCP premium fiber network, which we do for transit, users actually leverage it for connectivity. So this gives us things like, well, 187 edge locations, maybe more now, I don't know, it seems to grow all the time. The actual fiber interconnect between edge and compute. Separating edge from compute is brilliant. Why? Because when edge gets saturated, you're diverted to another one. And then if the next compute region is saturated, you get diverted to another one. It's real easy making sure things stay dynamic using cloud native networking and services and the cloud native architecture itself. So we think about applications, right? Application access, Google Workspace, okay? SaaS app hosted by Google, user ingresses into an edge location as close to them as possible. They're on fiber to that cloud location wherever that particular work or SaaS application is sitting, right? So super fast performance. You're not just ingressing into a cloud pop, egressing out of the same cloud pop, have a nice day because the rest of your traffic's over best effort internet to get there. We're trying to eliminate that middle mile variability. And that doesn't just apply to Google Workspace though. Our SaaS performance SLA applies to other applications too. Salesforce users, yeah, we are too. Slack, yep, we are too. So no matter where this user's coming in from, no matter what they're trying to access, they're not just gonna be on their own. They're gonna leverage that fiber network to improve performance from one end to the other. Not just for SaaS either. This is also for private applications. So when you connect your cloud VPCs or your data centers or your colos into Prisma Access, same thing happens, right? US-based app, pretty easy. No matter who's trying to access it, they're gonna get that fiber connectivity, whether it's a US user, whether it's an Australia user, same user's going to a UK app, gonna use fiber to get there, right? It's just a matter of ensuring that we can improve performance end to end. So then when we talk about this, right? When I talk about, security being a key risk element that we help you avoid, I showed you that through ZTNA and a better way to do ZTNA. Business resiliency and continuity, this is how we do it with our partnership with Google Cloud, ensuring that we have the throughput, the scale, and the transport for your users. But now, that last part that I started with, right? Securely, efficiently, manageable user experience. You're sending your users cloud or application traffic through our cloud, you lose visibility into it. A lot of us that came from the networking side, we used to deploy network-based application performance management and monitoring tools across our LANs and WANs and data center networks and things like that. So if we saw a bottleneck, we could identify it, quickly triage it, remediate, and minimize user impact. Users remote, applications and data going to cloud and SaaS, a lot of that goes away. That visibility goes away. We need to get it back. How do we do that? By ensuring we provide end-to-end visibility. Integrated into our endpoint connectivity client, integrated into our SD-WAN premise devices. We go segment by segment, hop by hop through the application delivery path, making sure we see everything we possibly can. This way, when something does go wrong, and this is highly simplified, of course, but this means that when something does go wrong, we can see it, identify it, and do something about it. Incredibly important when we think about the scale that our networks are using. So then, as we do this, you get a dashboard, right? You hop in, take a look. What's the health of my world? What does my network look like? Do I have a lot of green up there? Well, I hope so. But if I have some red up here, let's click into that, right? Some of these circles that have a little bit of red, what's going on? Let's see. Let's take a look. Or if we've got a lot of red, or isolated red due to a particular application. Oh, there's another big collaboration tool that's hosted out of the Pac Northwest that has sporadic outages in the Chicago area all the time. Huh. Guess who it's affecting? Everybody in that general vicinity. We can click into that. We can see it. So people aren't necessarily calling us. They can call the provider, right? They can do something a little bit more intelligent. But then you get that in view. This is what it looks like from your perspective. Managing this on a day-to-day basis for ensuring your user experience is keen and up to speed per application. So you got two views, right? So you got a dashboard looking at that path, and then you've got a per application view. How are my applications performing? And if something's wrong, why is it wrong? Let's dig into that and find out. So this is all feeding data. This is where AI starts to really help understand things and get better at things like detection, diagnosis, and remediation, right? Because if we see all this stuff happening in line, both from a security perspective and a networking perspective, there are things that we can do about this. Whether it's proactive or reactive, because it's something we haven't seen before, but now it does know. So maybe now the next time we see the same thing, it does become a proactive response. But in order to do that, we have to have consistency in the tool set. Unified SASE, because a lot of organizations are like, well, I get the concept of SASE a little bit. I like to build it myself, do things myself. Yeah, but then you've got another set of logs that you're trying to aggregate and collate and make sense of, right? If you use a unified SASE approach, you've got all of this traffic going through it. So you're seeing your user traffic, your branch traffic to any application across any network, no matter where that application lives. So from a security perspective, something happens, an event happens, you deal with it. When a service impacting traffic interruption happens, you can deal with it because you see it. It's happening in the same place. It's delivering better security outcomes for us. So now when I talk about what those SASE-based outcomes should be, protect apps and users, or users, apps, and data, ensuring that we're simplifying things while improving user experience. What AI does for us is it amplifies those, right? It's ensuring that we take a look at things in a better approach and say, hey, let's use AI to have better security outcomes. Let's sit in line, see all of these threats, do something about it, get better at zero-day detection. These threats are becoming more sophisticated all the time. We've got to get better. There's no such thing as a reactionary approach to this anymore. All the big guys that got popped over the years, they didn't not have tools in their environment to stop this stuff. They just weren't using them properly. They weren't getting good data out of it, right? This is about improving that. Simplification, you can do that when you have a unified approach because now we've got fewer tools. We think about all of those potential access methods, whether it's human employees, human non-employees like third parties and contractors, devices, applications, all of those are users because they're consumers of your digital resources. So making sure that all of the tools that provide user access to information, data, and applications is unified, simplifying that environment. And then, of course, user experience can be improved because we can improve day two operations through end-to-end visibility and observability. So we don't just, talk about this and say, hey, give us a try. We think you'll like us. We get a little validation too. So from our SSE perspective, Security Service Edge, which is a component of SASE, and SD-WAN, which is the other component of SASE, we're the only vendor that is in leader quadrants for both MQs. But then just last week, if anybody noticed that, we were the only single vendor SASE leader in the Magic Quadrant. One of the things that we heard during the evaluation, which was interesting, was while everybody else seems to be playing checkers, you guys are playing 3D chess. So that was pretty cool. So we're serious about what we're doing. Palo Networks, again, known as a firewall company typically. A lot of you probably know us from our Prisma Cloud capability. Think about Prisma Access. Again, what gets your users to that edge, that cloud edge, where Prisma Cloud takes over from there. Prisma Access and SASE into Prisma Cloud. Two different capabilities, but a much better together story when it comes to this. So when it comes to AI though, look, we could say the future of SASE is AI powered, but it's not. Everything I talked about today is here, now and available today. So I will have time for some questions if you have some. There is a mic here at the front that I was supposed to tell you about earlier before I started, but it is here. So if you do have questions, please use it. But still, send some feedback, okay? It is appreciated. I don't necessarily get paid on it, but I appreciate positive feedback if it's okay. And I just want to thank you all for your time.